Well, welcome everybody. I know there's a few folks that are continue joining us in the next couple of minutes, but we'll get started. I'd like to welcome everybody here to this, the world of security as things changes in our environments. We continue to think about what we should be doing for our security posture, and it's an evolving environment. So Microserve has a very strong partnership with Fortra, used to be known as Terranova Security, and we've been quite successful in both in British Columbia and in Alberta with our vendor of record position for cybersecurity awareness training. We're going to step it up a little bit in terms of the thought leadership conversation, in terms of raising the level of thought process of what cybersecurity awareness training does for our organization in the context of AI. So if you want to move to the next slide, please, Theo. Thank you. I'm joined today by an amazing collaborator with Microserve. His name is Theo. He's the CISO and professional services for Terranova Security. And so he's going to be the one delivering most of the content today. And I'm Sylvain Jacob. I'm the Vice President of Sales. And I've been with Microserve here for 7 years now, and moved to British Columbia from Quebec 10 years ago. The interesting dynamic that we're dealing with right now is that Quebec has been hit with a freezing rain situation, and they have a lot of power outages. So Theo is running off his hotspot, off the battery of his PC, off his phone to deliver this content with us today. So bear with us. If anything happens on his end, I will pick it up on our side. So we'll repurpose with me delivering the content or sharing the presentation on my side if anything happens on Theo's side. There will be a little bit of a survey towards the end, and you will be receiving an Amazon gift card for filling out that survey. We certainly hope that you will appreciate the thought leadership content that we have to deliver here for you today. Theo, next slide, please. A little bit about Microserve and where that conversation fits into our services portfolio. We have full IT services for our customers, from IT procurement to managed services, and we couldn't be doing IT these days without a strong IT security practice to support our clients. And really, our IT security practice kind of spread across our entire services portfolio, from margin management, from data center management, project and consulting, our end user compute practice, our managed services, and our cloud practice all have a security component to the equation. And on the call with us today, we have our security practice lead. His name is Alex Martins. So if there's any follow-up after this conversation, reach out to your account manager. We'd be glad to bring Alex in and having a broader security conversation with your organization to help improve your security posture in the future. We believe that security is a journey. It's not a point in time. I'm done with my security posture today. It's a journey that constantly evolves. And for now, I'll turn it over to Theo to deliver the majority of our content for you today. Thank you very, very much for joining. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A discussion. Feel free to type in your question in the chat, and I will interact with Theo as the questions come up in the chat. I'll make sure that I bring your question up at the right moment during our conversation. Thank you. So Theo, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Sylvain. Yeah, and let me know if there's any questions, as I now have visibility on my Teams window. So
I will. I'll monitor that for you.
Perfect. Thank you, and welcome everyone. And let's see if we could rely on technology and 5G as it promises good speed. So let's hope this presentation, we can manage to go through the whole presentation. So we're going to start talking about AI and cybersecurity because it has become a hot topic recently. We get a lot of questions on how is AI going to affect the way we do cybersecurity, and how is it going to affect how cyber criminals construct and deliver cyber attacks. And we'll tie that into the cybersecurity culture of individuals, and then how we do an awareness program to target the threats, but also the expectations of organizations and also of the users. So first, let's look at how AI impacts cybersecurity. There's a lot of talk about ChatGPT, OpenAI, the GT4 that's coming up, and what it could do to help professionals, but also help cyber criminals. And we know that with any new technology that comes out, cyber criminals will always find an opportunity to leverage this technology to conduct attacks or facilitate the attacks they're already doing. So they could create code that may contain new zero-day vulnerabilities, or they could create even legitimate code, but that is used in a malicious manner to deliver a cyber attack. And this gives more opportunities to people with lower level skills to create more sophisticated attacks. Some experts say that the AI is not mature enough to create sophisticated attacks, but we have to admit that it's still in its early ages and early stages of development. So the more we use it, the more it learns. The more time goes by, the more it learns, the better it will become in the future. So don't just look at what it could do today. Imagine what it could do in 3 to 5 years from now. And also, cyber criminals could use AI to collect and analyze large volumes of data much quicker, allowing them to create and those targeted attacks by correlating information that they have obtained from different data leaks, right? And then they could create a scenario targeting a specific individual because we have a piece of information from this source, a piece of information from a different source, and so on. So bringing all that together, creating a scenario that is specific and individualized by correlating all the data that is available. We already start seeing deepfakes. It's not the first time, and we even saw with the situation down in the United States, deepfakes leveraging famous or popular entities to create either videos or voice recordings of the individuals to convince a specific opinion or move to a specific direction, or make people to believe that somebody legitimate is calling them because they just recognize the voice and they follow their instructions. And also AI could be used to generate new tools, but that could be used by cyber criminals. The difference between the cyber criminals and the good guys is that they tend to move much faster. They create new code, they share it amongst each other. They don't care who uses it or if it's working. There's no conditions when you share the code, the malicious code with your peers. You use it as it is. If it doesn't work, you can't come back and complain to me. Whereas developing new technology that includes AI on the defensive side, it takes a lot more time. A lot of times also it's created for profit, right? So organizations are going to sell this. They're not going to give it out for free. And it's only attainable for organizations that have a high security budget. And it takes a lot more time to put those products into market because you have to make sure that they work properly, because there's liability concerns if you sell a product that doesn't function or offer the level of security that we'd expect. So the cyber criminals are going to leverage and are going to move much faster than we can in this domain. So we have to be aware of this. But also, there is going to be benefits that we're starting to see on the cybersecurity industry because the technology is going to work much better, provided that we have sufficient funding to acquire it. And then it'll become a lot more mainstream because now everybody's going to start including it in their products because they want to remain competitive. So they may start incorporating some level of AI to provide some intelligence and more effective responses to the events that your tools encounter. It may also improve accuracy by eliminating, decision making from human error, or being able to analyze a large volume of data much quicker and in a much more efficient way. When leveraging technology that incorporates AI and AI that makes decisions, you're going to have to consider on who goes first. Does the AI make the decision and then you have a human validate that decision to make sure that it doesn't break something? Or does a human make a decision first and then AI comes in to validate the human decision and correct and adjust it if it wasn't done fast enough or accurately enough? So there's different ways to implement and leverage AI, and at what step in the decision making it's there. So whether it's AI that is the backup to the human, or does the human become the backup to AI decision making? There is the potential downsides if we start having over reliance on AI, or especially around risk management, because there might be some lack of transparency, like what decisions is the AI making, and to have a good trace on what information did the AI have available at its disposal to make those decisions, what logic, what path did it take to make those decisions or provide this information. So we may not have full visibility all the time or ability to go back and trace the path that AI took to make those decisions. And it could be also that there is biases in the decision making based on the information available to the AI at the time of the decision. Maybe it didn't have all the right or the necessary information. So how do we make sure that at the time of decision making, the AI tools have all the pertinent information? And also, like we mentioned earlier, potential use for hackers to leverage AI or even leverage weaknesses of AI to conduct cyber attacks. A lot of the publicly available AI platforms that are out there today have controls in place to minimize or reduce, abuse or use of those technologies for malicious intents. But there's always going to be a human that finds a way to bypass those controls, similar to the way we jailbreak cell phones, right? And providers keep putting additional controls to avoid jailbreaking, and then people still find an additional way to jailbreak the phones. People will find a way to jailbreak, bypass those controls that the AI is putting into place, and still leverage it for potential malicious intents. Having AI, though, it could be beneficial for organizations, and there's different ways to implement AI. The first one and most common one we see is chatbots that could be used to inform and educate employees. Similar to the way where you go to a site and you see a pop-up, somebody texting you saying, "Hey, I'm available to talk with you if you have any questions." Well, that's a chatbot. It's an AI that may create automatic responses based on the questions that you provide. Well, what if we had started providing these chatbots not only for external and client-facing services, but what if we made those available for employees if they have questions about something? Do they have to call the help desk to find out how to send a secure email, or can they use this virtual security expert or chatbot to get them that information? Also, we're going to start seeing machine learning on employee behaviors, because we want to be able to tackle awareness with what users are doing. So, for example, if users are surfing the platform, are they going to sites that seem malicious or offer illegal content? Are they sending sensitive information via email? So, if we had visibility in all the actions that the user is taking, and then learning from that and adapting our message and our context based on the profile and actions of the user, then we could make awareness more targeted and more specific to the user, but also the behaviors and risks that we want to address. Obviously, in IPS, IDS detection, user behavior analytics, it's pretty straightforward. These are the first areas where we're going to see AI being integrated because there's a lot of data, and it's easy to automate AI actions and decision making in those areas. You see an attack coming in from this area, well, then I will learn from the pattern and I will apply mitigating controls in all the technologies that I have access to prevent this attack from either propagating within the network or reaching additional individuals that have not been targeted yet. So those are the most common and most obvious ways where we're going to see AI benefit organizations and security technology providers. Now let's tie this in to what we call the cybersecurity culture. And when we talk about culture, we talk about what individuals think their responsibility are, what are their motivations, what are their beliefs, and what are their expectations when it comes to cybersecurity. And to do this, we conducted a survey last summer, leveraging Ipsos, where we send a security questionnaire to several thousand people across the world. I think it was 5 countries that we targeted to understand what are the current cybersecurity awareness levels, because we want to see what people believe cybersecurity is. We want to see what people think the responsibility is, and do they perceive this risk as real or just fiction, as something we see at the movies, right? Because most of the users, if they have not suffered a cybersecurity attack, the only time they've been exposed to it is either the news or the movies or the TV shows that they watch. And for people who know cybersecurity, those don't always reflect reality. So this survey was conducted against in 5 countries with a total of about 4,000 individuals. The conditions were that they were 18 to 75 years old, and they had to be employed working at our organization because the questions were pertinent at the personal and at the organizational level. So from the results, what we saw is that we're going to get information that is going to help cybersecurity leaders when they're started to design and implement security awareness programs. And I've seen a lot of times, especially in the education sector, school boards and colleges and universities have a difficult time deploying awareness programs to staff that is probably overworked and already had too much training in their lives to follow an additional course. So we have to understand what is and the employee's perspective when it comes to cybersecurity and how to address their individual concerns. We also have to know what are the individual knowledge gaps, because not everybody has the same knowledge. And where do they get that? Where did they acquire that knowledge? But also, do they apply that knowledge what is necessary? And also, you want to build an organization that is ready for the future, ready for AI-based attacks or AI-based malware that may come into play later on. So, because the modes of delivery of these attacks is not necessarily going to change, but the sophistication and the way they get generated is going to change. We're still going to see phishing email coming in. We're still going to see malware coming in. We're going to see brute force attacks or social engineering attacks. But now they're going to be leveraging AI to create a scenario, to create a story, or even the software that is going to be used. So from a user perspective, if we have the best practices, the base foundation on detecting these attacks, no matter how they were created or generated, we will have the minimum skill set to defend against these. So the first question that we wanted to address is, do people perceive cybersecurity threats as a reality? And 76% of the respondents said that they have been targeted themselves, or someone who has been targeted by a cybersecurity attack. And I could raise my hand. I've been targeted so many times. I've suffered through financial fraud, a lot of times phishing email coming in all the time. I know people who have been compromised through phishing and through ransomware. So nobody could deny that this threat is not real, right? It's there, it's happening, it affects all of us. The other 24% that said that they have not, it's likely because they're not aware. Because the moment you're on the internet and you connect to the internet, you have access to the world but at the same time, the world has access to you. In the recent years, we do more online entertainment, government services, health services, work, entertainment, shopping. Pretty much every aspect of our lives, even education, has an online component. So the more we are online, the more opportunity there is for these attacks to take place and target us. Also, we noticed that a lot of users rate their organization knowledge as good. Only 33% said that my organization is 8 out of 10 or more when it comes to cybersecurity awareness. So they don't perceive that the organization is either doing enough or good enough in protecting either its employees or the services it offers. And cybersecurity departments may be a little bit at fault at that because often they don't market themselves, they don't socialize what we do. Cybersecurity tends to be a very, I guess, maybe complex sometimes, but also sensitive topic. We cannot share too much information. Typically, the only time we hear about it is when something goes wrong. We rarely hear about the successes or, successfully blocking an attack or successfully mitigating a threat actor from conducting harm. So
Yeah, Theo,
users.
this is a delicate balance that our IT professional here on the call needs to always strike: is how much do we share and what we do into our broader, end user community versus what we keep secret so that we don't overexpose ourselves by sharing too much. It's always a delicate balance that our customer needs to constantly juggle with.
Yes, and I totally agree. And it's in the amount of details that we have to pay attention, but some good success or incident stories are also a good learning moment because it shows to individuals and employees that, look, we are targeted, we are not immune, and so on. So make it real for everyone when we're relaying information to them about what we do.
Right.
Another thing that was interesting is that also even less than 33% think that their colleagues are good because they've observed insecure behaviors among their colleagues, either a sharing of a password or leaving their computer screen unlocked when they're stepping away, sensitive documents left either on printers or on desks, right? But what are you supposed to do when you observe your colleague having insecure behavior? Well, we always recommend to take action, right? If you see a sensitive document on the printer labeled clearly confidential, well, don't leave it there, right? Put it in the shredder or try to find the owner. Right, so everybody has a role to play when it comes to cybersecurity. And when we observe our colleagues doing insecure behaviors, it becomes a bit of our responsibility to advise them or inform them. And don't forget that what we think of others, it's likely they think the same thing of us, provided the percentage was very low. So organizations and individuals within organizations don't think that anybody is applying best practices at every level of the organization. And the root cause for that is that only 40% said that my organization has mandatory security training in place, and 33% said that there's nothing. We have no access to resources, nothing to inform us or nothing to train us. Does that mean that if it was available, we would follow it? That's a different question. But at least providing a place where you could get information, best practices, or even reminders that this threat is still out there. You may be targeted by a phishing, by a social engineering. Please be aware. Here are some of the most recent scams we have seen targeted our organization or others in our sector. Please be aware of them. So it requires some kind of program and reach out activities to get this information to users in order to adopt these best practices. And as everybody expected, 77% of Canadian employees believe that it's solely the IT department's responsibility to protect the organization and ensure that information security is properly applied. Large number of users also believe that IT alone could block every social engineering attack or every phishing. Yes, maybe 95% gets blocked, so the user is saved from 95% of those, but there is still a small percentage of attacks that may bypass those filters. that technology has put in place. So then the malicious attack makes it to the eye of the user. The user becomes that control that has to make that decision. Is this is this safe? Is this legitimate or not? Also, users has to be trained not to cry wolf every time they see an email with a link, right? There is legitimate messages that contain links. So how do we create that balance of being able to recognize, this is a legitimate message, I have to act on it, versus this seems suspicious in some reason, let me investigate. Let me take 30 seconds to investigate a bit further before I act on it.
Hey, Theo, we've got a question in our chat right now. The question comes from asking the source of this information, which I believe is a survey that you submitted to, you said, what, 7,000 users in North America or something like that?
Yes. So I will provide a link at the end where you could download the full detailed results of the survey. But this is a survey that Ipsos did on our behalf across 4,000 individuals.
Hopefully that answers your question, Jonathan. Please proceed.
Yeah. All right.
Theo.
So and then so the last one said that almost half of Canadian employees said that they have not participated on any form of cybersecurity awareness trainings at their employers, and only a small percentage said that 33% that the organization is offering some kind of training opportunities, whether in mandatory training activities or informal information sessions, so they could be trained on those issues.
That gets me thinking, Theo, that a lot of our customers have cybersecurity awareness training, but maybe their user community are not aware of them or not reinforced enough. So I think these are really good questions, even for our customers, to consider asking their own user community how they feel about cybersecurity awareness, even if they do have a program in place.
Yes, and that comes back to the marketing of the program, or whether the program and certain activities are mandatory and become a condition of employment, right? Along with everything else. So depending what approach you take in your training program, you have to make sure that you're socializing the resources that are available and keep reminding your employees where they're available and how they could get more information. We had seen examples of organizations saying, well, I'm putting a program in place, but it's not going to mandatory. I'm going to inform users to let them know that these resources are available throughout the year. I'm going to provide through my regular bulletins and my communications more info on how to access this information, but I will not make it mandatory. But my expectations for participations will be low, around 10%, because I know, if it's not mandatory, people may not do it because they're already overwhelmed with their training activities. Whereas on the other side of the spectrum, we have organizations that say, well, this is very important for us, maybe because we suffered a ransomware breach last year, and we don't want to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Our insurance and our auditors has mandated that we put a program in place that is mandatory for all. Right. So then they say, well, mandatory training, it's a condition of employment. New employees get informed. Existing employees have to complete the training, or else there's an escalation to supervisor manager. We have a participation expectation rate of 90% or higher. So depending, those are the two sides of the spectrum. You could be somewhere in between, but align your expectations based on your, I would say, risk tolerance, right? And your capability for putting a program and learning activities into place.
That's good. Thanks, Theo.
So when it comes to building a security-aware culture, this is where, we have to take a step back and think about, like I mentioned earlier, the user's understanding of their role, their perceptions, their beliefs, their attitudes towards cybersecurity. And ideally, cybersecurity culture starts at home. As everything else, like, good behaviors, good best practices, or we learn them in school through our formative years, or for the older generations, they could learn that through their governments. So the government's responsibility to train its citizens on the cyber threats. but we're still behind in those areas. How many people are teaching their kids on, being cyber safe online? Uh, you know, even teaching the basic principles of, being a responsible digital citizen in schools, and even the government puts out sites like Get Cyber Safe. But how many citizens are familiar or aware of the Get Cyber Safe website, or the fact that they need to report identity theft to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center, right? So this information hasn't reached out the majority of the users. So it becomes a responsibility of organizations to start building that culture, and start training and changing the behavior of adults. Right now, we're going into adult education because these people are, as set in their ways, or they believe they know certain things, and that's good enough. But it's important that there's things that you don't know, right? What is important? What are the risks that you face when you receive an email that may not be coming from a legitimate source, right? On an annual basis, we do what we call our gone phishing tournament, where we send phishing simulations to thousands or even millions of participants. Last year it was 1.2 million. And we still see to this day that people fail to recognize the most obvious signs when it comes to a phishing website. So the most obvious is the lack of HTTPS, or if your browser is telling you not secure, well, you shouldn't be putting your password, right? 100%. Yet close to 20% of individuals still put their password in a website that is not secure with HTTPS. So that is a basic principle that in 2023, people should know, right? The fact that it is HTTPS is there doesn't make it secure 100%. So let's just be clear on that. But the lack of HTTPS should immediately raise red flags. And yet people still don't know that the basic security concept. So this is very important for organizations to ensure that they have a good compliance with either internal or external requirements, and also make sure that employees are confident in their day-to-day when they take actions, that they're taking the right actions and will not cause an accident by mistake. Also, as we noticed with the remote and hybrid workforce, new technology came into place, cloud solutions, more threats targeting the remote worker, and also now these employees working from home, well, are responsible for securing their home environment. They are the administrators of their home network and the home office. Are they applying all the necessary security to protect their home environment as home administrators? So this is the information that we need to relay to these users, making sure that we're ready for the future, and also, start moving the users from what we often call the weakest link, but it's not necessarily that they're weak, is that we've never taken the time to inform them and train them of the best cybersecurity best practices. So we have to get them to be on our side and become our allies. When we talked about drivers, and these are not just drivers for an awareness program, this is drivers in general that drive cybersecurity programs. But your awareness program should be aligned with your cybersecurity strategic objectives. Why are you doing cybersecurity? And in turn, why are you doing awareness? Well, you're doing awareness to address the human element, the people aspect of cybersecurity. Because let's not forget that when we talk about cybersecurity and cybersecurity incidents, there's always a human factor associated, whether on the offensive side, the attacker, or whether on the defensive side, our users. It's always cybersecurity. There hasn't been a cybersecurity incident that it did not involve a human, okay? Either by a malicious intention or by accident. So we have to understand and pay attention to this component. Our drivers may be external. So these are external drivers that we do not have control over. They're coming from the outside, and we have to, keep up with the times, keep up with the requirements. The internal drivers are things that we impose on ourselves and we have control over. So what's important to us? What have we seen in the past in terms of incidents? Are we moving to a different directions? Are we implementing new technology and so on? and we want to drive an awareness program. And depending on the sector and the data that you use, there may be industry specific drivers that you have to take into consideration when designing your program. So when you're taking all these factors into consideration, you're gonna build a program, and a program that instills cybersecurity aware culture will help you address, several challenges that organizations are seeing today. Organizations that do not have this established culture. When you don't have a culture of awareness, of understanding, well, people will not be motivated to take the program, because a lot of times what motivates individuals is different than what motivates organizations. Here's the training. Well, most users are going to say, well, I don't need to know. How does it benefit me, right? IT has to protect us. I don't have nothing to do with it. So we have to take into consideration to help motivate employees.
Theo, sorry, sorry to interrupt. Someone put one question into the
Yes,
chat, I guess.
go ahead.
Uh, Jonathan,
We already covered that. We already covered that, Alex.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we already answered his question.
Okay,
Okay.
sorry.
No worries.
Going on.
No problem. And then we talked about also training that may not be effective because maybe we're not targeting the right components, or maybe users are not interesting, or they're taking the course for the purpose of completing the course, but then they're not applying what they've learned on the day-to-day practices. And also, we don't want to waste our time and our resources and our efforts in activities that nobody's going to do. So let's focus our program and making sure that it is a success for everyone. And why we need it is because products alone do not guarantee the success, because there is going to be always a way to bypass those controls. We have to put technical controls in a million different places to protect our organization. Cyber criminals only need to find one spot, a social engineering attack that doesn't contain a link or a file or any other kind of payload, right? It just contains instructions. Well, how well is technology, capable in stopping that attack, right? That doesn't contain any malicious payload, simply instructions, right? So we have to be training our individuals on how to detect those attacks. So, and to start this change in culture, we have to start with the executive support, right? We have to start at the top and making sure that all levels of the organizations agree on the need of the program, and also agree that the fact that this is a responsibility for every single user within the organization. So universal buy-in is required, and also that will help boost participation, because it shows that this program, it's not just driven by IT or the information security department. Right? We recommend that security awareness programs be part of the overall either HR or training package for employees. Yes, cybersecurity is a subject matter expert, could drive the topics, but they're not the ones necessarily that are going to drive the consequences for non-participation or push users to complete the training. We've seen a lot of organizations that leverage the team supervisor as that promoter, that ambassador, that supervisor, to say, look, your team has to complete this training. Find a way to do it, motivate them the way you usually do for any other work-related task, right? Get them to do it. So then it becomes every supervisor's responsibility to get their staff to complete the training, and also allocate the time necessary. Right.
Meaning that make sure that the employees have the cycle within their workload to complete
Correct.
this training, that they're not overburdened by a whole bunch of other things, so they can dedicate and focus to this training.
Yes, and I've seen that a lot in the educational sector, where they may have a couple campaigns at the start of the semester or at the start of the school year to say, well, okay, this is the time where we're starting the year, we have new students, we have new professors coming in, we'll dedicate it a 15, 20 minute because it's important, and this time we'll make sure that everybody has allocated the time at the start of the semester to complete the training. In other cases, we've seen also organizations say, well, during a pet day, say, well, take 15 minutes between here and here to complete this assigned training. we've allocated some time for you to take the training. There shouldn't be an excuse for not completing this training and absorbing this information. So as users start to understand the benefits of this, it'll increase the motivation, and also not just to learn and come back for more, but also to apply what they've learned, to pause and think before they click. We may see also higher participation rates without requiring to do too many follow-ups and too many reminders, because users will do it on their own at the very beginning. Perfect example that I like to use is the wearing of the seatbelt when we get in the car. Some people wear the seatbelt because they believe it's going to save their life, and they're convinced. Others wear it because they just don't want to get a fine. Right? Either way, they wear the seatbelt, but we want more people wearing their seatbelt because they understand that it's going to save their life. They're not afraid of the management consequences of getting a fine.
That's a great analogy, Theo. I love that analogy.
Yeah, feel free to use it at any time.
Yeah.
So then users, what they learn, what they know, they share with their colleagues, they share it with their peers. They're not afraid to ask questions if they don't know how to do something. They're not embarrassed. And also, if they did something wrong, they're not afraid to raise their hand and say, look, I clicked on this link and I put my password by mistake. Can you please help me? Right? Because they're not afraid of the negative consequences. And that gives organizations the opportunity to correct and mitigate anything bad from happening. So it's really important to create that culture and making so that everybody is working today. The best way to do this is to have a formal awareness program, again, that is managed. You need to have maybe 1 or 2 people at a minimum, depending the size of your organization, managing your program. Also, if you don't have a lot of staff that could support you, implementing an ambassador program where you could leverage individuals at different regions, different facilities, different schools. Say, okay, you are the local ambassador for this unit, this department, this school. Please make sure that people are aware, inform them, promote the program within your environment to make sure everybody participates. Selecting content that is fun, interactive, pertinent to what they're doing and to their responsibility, to the threat that they're facing, the technology that they're using. And also, if you can, well, create personalized campaigns. Okay, well, here is your roadmap, right? The way, we take a specialization when we go into university because we want to learn something specific. Well, based on your profile, here are the top courses that you should take versus somebody else that works in a different environment. Well, based on your profile, here are the courses that you need to take, and making it tailored and specific to the individual, and maintaining that ongoing collaboration between cybersecurity, maybe by having that ambassador in the middle that acts as a two-way communication channel, and the users having the opportunity to provide feedback so management could adapt the program and improve it over time. So high quality content could come in various different formats: learning modules, serious games, escape room type of activities where users are in this environment and have 5 minutes to figure out the clues, all related to cybersecurity to complete the game. This also a new format becomes more interesting for students because they're used to this interactive games and so on. So it becomes an interesting way of learning what tends to be a complex topic in most cases, and most people are afraid to touch it because they don't understand it. So how do we simplify it? How to make it easy? With an ambassador program, there's several ways to start one. You could start with volunteers or nominations to have these individuals that become an authorized extension of the cybersecurity team, and not just for awareness, but any security questions that the users might have, it could leverage to this ambassador. The cybersecurity team could be preparing some material, some memos that they distribute on a monthly basis to the ambassadors to distribute to the local groups, environments, or schools. So that will help create those connections. And also, if you have ambassadors that understand more the problems of a specific department or a specific business area, well, they could translate cybersecurity more into the context. we talk about phishing and a password compromise. Well, a password compromise for someone that works in HR versus someone that works in finance or someone who works in research have different consequences, right? Okay, your password was lost, but what's next? What can someone do with that password? What can someone do if they access your email? And putting the risks and the threats in the context of the user. So that's how we leverage ambassadors. We talked about the personalized campaigns, individual campaigns for the users, either by looking at their behaviors and just providing just-in-time training, through phishing simulations. You clicked, here's what we should have looked at, right? You open a ticket because actually you were infected by a virus for real because you plugged an unsecure or an USB, a foreign USB. Well, here's what you need to know so this doesn't happen again. Right? So leveraging different sources of information to provide tailored information, but also just in time, the time that it's needed the most. So by doing all this, you could still build long-term resilience to any cyber threats, no matter how they get created. We mentioned at the beginning, AI is going to elevate the complexity and the frequency of these attacks. But the delivery methods will remain the same for the foreseeing future. So we want our users to be prepared for anything that may face. As attacks become more sophisticated, they need to be aware of that sophistication and what it means, and they have the proper tools and skill set to react accordingly.
Hey, Theo, just doing a quick time check.
Yes.
We're 11:17, another 5 minutes or so to allow for some questions.
Yeah, we're pretty much done. So
awesome.
Just perfect timing. So
perfect timing. Good.
Yeah, on our platform, on our website, we have several tools that is available. The first one is the report from the survey. It provides a lot more data than I was able to share within the presentation. So feel free to visit our website and download the report. We also have data from the latest Gone Fishing tournament that we completed in October. So if you wanted to see how the education sector fared at that last event, you could download also the report. That report was offering that event, that phishing simulation was offering a $25 gift card at the exchange of your corporate password. And about 4% of 1.2 million people were willing to share their corporate password for a $25 gift card.
Oh my God! That's hilarious.
Yeah. So, and if you also want to learn more about implementing an awareness program, all the different steps we talked about here, building the culture, an ambassador program, and so on, we've published our version 2 of our book, the Human Fix to the Human Risk, that takes all our knowledge from implementing programs for hundreds of clients across the world, and we put that in a book. Again, you could find information about that on our website, or I believe it's also available on Amazon. All right, so that was it. If we do have any questions.
Well, there's certainly a lot to unpack in all of this, and I think as many customers probably think that they have a strong security posture, there's always room for improvement. And what I hear from you, Theo, is really around the governance and making sure you got policies and procedures behind the tools. It's not just enough to have the tools in place, but also having the governance from an organizational sponsorship point of view, and the HR department is involved. So it's not just one department that's involved here; it's the entire company that kind of has to, be pay attention to this. To this security world we live in. So thank you, Theo. Great content, for our customers here on the line. We're certainly hopeful that you saw value in this conversation. We're open for the next 10 minutes to have some questions, some dialogues, either off mute, or putting the questions in the chat. We have 10 minutes allocated for this portion of the session.